Straight up, guys, no, this was not a woke film. I wouldn't say whatsoever, but for the most part, this is not a woke film. It's not even worth me spending my time on the full 5 criteria. It'd just be wasting your time and mine. But I thought I'd just talk about this film a little bit more today because I think there's some things to discuss here outside of that criteria and just kind of give a kind of a broad view of the supposed wokeness of this film or the lack thereof. So first up, this is a film that obviously has cast two straight white males in the main role. So we know that about them, right? And so if you hear me saying that this film is not woke, I'm sure there's a lot of you out there going, oh, well, it's only because the mains are two straight white males. So that's why you think it's not woke. No, I think it's more than that because I always am consistent on this where I say it's about how they are used, not superficially who's on screen, whether they are white, black, male, female, gay, straight, whatever. It's all about how they are used within the context of the film. Now, the film is presented as them two being the main heroes that they're going to be, at least in the marketing for the film, that's how they're presented to be. We have seen this bait and switch many times in recent history with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, particularly with like Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness, saw it with Thor, Love and Thunder. We've seen it even in Wakanda Forever, with all sorts of films out where they're setting out to subvert expectations where it's advertised as the main male character, but then it's really the females all around him who are doing all the work, and he's kind of incompetent, they're the best at everything, whatever. This film is not like that, and that's changed. That's very much a change for compared to what they've been doing in recent history. So pretty much since Endgame. This film, it's all about Deadpool and Wolverine, and they are the heroes at the end of it. And that's what it promises, and that's what it delivers. That's the main thing here. That's what I'm impressed by, and it was just really almost refreshing to see that. There's also no pandering in this film. You know, none of the characters at any point are pandering to any of the sort of meta circumstances of the audiences. You know, they're not pandering to certain ideologies or anything like that, trying to appeal to any certain groups. The only people that they're trying to appeal to, and it's the only people they should ever be trying to appeal to, is the fans. And you could see that with a lot of the jokes that Ryan Reynolds was making, where he's referencing the state of Marvel now, which is at its lowest point. Things that most fans can see now, whether you are enjoying or disliking the current stuff that they're giving us, you cannot deny by any measure that this is the lowest point since the start of the Marvel Cinematic Universe by far. So he's pointing fingers at that, they're laughing at themselves, they're hinting and winking at the fans that we get it, we know we've stuffed up. Which with this film, at least with this film, we're going to try and correct course and give you what you want, give you just the heroes being the heroes, giving you fan service like the Wolverine costume and the mask, all of that, things that people have been waiting for decades. We finally got in this film. You know, you got Gambit from that people talked about for years, Channing Tatum playing, got to see Wesley Snipes again as Blade, all of that, just little fun moments just for the fans to have some joy and some fun once again, without having to, you know, be let down by some other aspects of the film that are trying to pander to certain groups. With regards to wokeness, there is actually a direct reference to this in the film. It's probably the first time it's ever, well, the word woke is ever mentioned in a Marvel film, if I'm not mistaken. And the reference here is that there's a scene where Nova arrives, the sister of Magneto, and she's in a wheelchair, and she gets up out of the wheelchair, and he goes, wow, ableism, the woke mob's going to be coming after you for that. Like, that was a funny moment, just hinting at stuff that we know that happens in the real world, at least on the likes of Twitter and stuff like that, where people complain about everything. And yeah, just making a direct reference to that is, I'm not going to say it's even meant to appeal to people who are anti-woke. It's just literally referencing something that we all see in today's world, where we see these sorts of comments all the time, where people are being called ists and isms and phobes for everything under the sun these days. If there's one little area of the film where I'd say it was slightly woke, it's not so much something that was done, but rather something that wasn't done, at least compared to the previous Deadpool films. And what I'm talking about is, in the previous films, he would make jokes about everything under the sun, and some of those things that he'd make jokes about is like sexual jokes about particularly women, and things that he was very attracted to them and wanted to do certain things, whatever. You know, he wasn't afraid to say some of the most like raunchiest stuff. This film, however, the sexual jokes are only used in sort of like almost like a homosexual, like bisexual kind of way, where he's referencing like Wolverine's like body and different male characters' physiques, things like that. He's never ever sexualizing any female characters in the film. Now it's a really stupid thing, but you just couldn't kind of help but notice it, and it feels like kind of ironic that they kind of feel that the safer jokes he could make would be gay jokes rather than misogynist jokes. It's kind of funny that we're now at that point where that seems like the safer thing to do, where back in the day it probably would have been the reverse. But yeah, just one thing kind of noticed about the film. It's very minimal. I didn't even really have a problem with it, but I just rather noticed and I thought I'd mention it here. But above all, as I've said, the film only seeks to entertain. It doesn't have a message. It doesn't have any ideology. It doesn't try to push anything that we know of like modern sort of politics or ideologies. It's just exists to entertain. Hell, it didn't barely even has a plot or a story. That's how committed they were to just bringing fun and laughter, is that they were willing to basically, you know, put the story secondary to only having these fun moments. So they just like did not care about the writing whatsoever with this film, and rather they were just going for one-liners, gags, set piece action, mindless action, all of that stuff. That's all they seemed to care about, and they would just seem to have this one clear goal of just mindless entertainment. And they did that, and it's such a rare thing to get these days because so many films get bogged down by the message and different things like that. So it's just so refreshing to see a film that only seeks to entertain. And so yeah, in summary, Deadpool and Wolverine is not woke, nothing really at all to look at there in that regard. If you are worried about any of it being in this film or your previous experiences with recent Marvel films, this is very different. There's nothing like any of those. This only seeks to entertain and it has none of that rubbish in it. In terms of if there are things you should worry about, it's rather the rating of the film. If you think you're bringing kids, I know that there's plenty of kids that have gone to see this film. I don't know if I would take my kid to see it. It's just like, it's kind of very raunchy, a lot of like crude humor in it. It's in that regard, it's, you know, it's something to worry about. But in terms of wokeness, that's not on the issue here. So it's very much in the clear in that regard. So yeah, very happy to report that Deadpool and Wolverine is not woke. It's safe for your consumption in that regard, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Even though I had significant issues with its story and plot, I still very much enjoyed it for the superficial aspects. So yeah, that's my thought on the film, guys. I'd love to hear yours in the comment section below. Did you pick up on some of the wokeness that I didn't, or is it certain things that you think I'm harping on about? Whatever, I'd love to hear them all. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.